There was no breath, no heartbeat, no body, only the trembling echo of a consciousness suspended in a storm of madness. Kratos did not know how long he had been drifting, seconds or centuries. In this realm, time bowed to nothing, and space was but a suggestion. The warp swallowed everything. It tasted his memories, gnawed on his regrets, and whispered names he wished forever buried. Calliope, Athena, Zeus. They flickered like embers in an ocean of screaming souls. He opened his eyes, though he had no eyes, and beheld a sky of writhing colors, bleeding into one another like open wounds on the hide of a dying god. The currents around him shifted, hungry, curious. They clawed at him, peeling away fragments of who he was, testing what remained beneath the scars of a once mortal, once God-Slayer. Something ancient, colossal, and terrible moved beneath the currents, circling him like a predator that had finally found a worthy prey. The warp, in all its malice, sought to unmake him, but Kratos had been unmade before, and still he endured. A pulse rippled across the void, a tremor that reached into his very essence. It was not the cackling mockery of the chaos entities that prowled the warp. No, this presence was colder, older, a will sharper than any blade he had ever held. Its command did not speak in words, yet it echoed unmistakably. Rise. He sensed chains lightless, unbreakable, latching onto his drifting soul. The warp recoiled at their touch, hissing as though burned. A force beyond gods and titans tugged at him, drawing him through the screaming currents, dragging him toward a point of singular purpose. He fought it, instinctively, for he was Kratos, killer of Olympus, breaker of fates. No force, however divine or cosmic, claimed him without bloodshed. But this presence did not yield, nor did it threaten. It commanded, and slowly, inexorably, Kratos felt his soul pulled from the formless void and thrust into something material, something shaped, something built. He slammed into existence. A gasp tore from his throat as lungs filled with cold, sterile air for the first time in ages. His vision blurred with the shock of embodiment, but as it sharpened, he found himself suspended inside a colossal vat of viscous fluid. Metal rings burned with symbols unlike any rune or script he had known, pulsing in rhythm with machines that shifted like iron titans chained to a singular purpose. The glass around him thrummed with an unnatural resonance. It felt like being forged inside a living furnace. Pain, strength, rebirth. His fingers twitched, and the fluid around him crackled with latent energy, reacting to him like lightning yearning for a storm. His bones, rebuilt from materials he did not know, felt denser than any metal he had touched. His muscles, sculpted by forces beyond mortal comprehension, coiled with suppressed might. He could feel his heart beating, each pulse sending shockwaves through the fluid like a war drum announcing its return. This was not Olympus. This was not Midgard. This was something far darker. He caught glimpses of robed figures beyond the vat, silhouettes framed by harsh white lights. They watched him with reverence mixed with fear. They whispered titles he did not yet understand: Primarch, Geneseed, perfected design. Words forged, not from myths, but from machinery, science, and an empire that worshipped neither gods nor monsters, only the absolute necessity of survival. His memories clashed against the present. He remembered fire, chains burning into flesh, the ashes of his family staining his skin like eternal judgment. He remembered gods falling beneath his blades. He remembered the quiet moments too, the rare peace, the fragile attempts at redemption. It all surged through his mind like a tide trying to drown him inside himself. But layered beneath those memories, woven through them like sinew, was something new. A voice, cold as a glacier, vast as a cosmos. You are more than what you were. You are what humanity requires. Through the thick glass, a figure approached, towering, radiant, impossible to define. His very presence bent the air. His outline blurred, not from distance, but from sheer immensity of power. Kratos felt it before he saw it, an aura so overwhelming that even Olympus had never known its equal. The being stared at Kratos with an unreadable expression, part scientist, part conqueror, part father. Not a god, no, something greater, something shaped by purpose, not divinity. The emperor of mankind. The title did not yet exist in Kratos' mind, but the truth of the being before him echoed louder than any name. Their gazes locked two forces bound by violence, tragedy, and a destiny neither had fully chosen. Memories not his own flickered at the edges of Kratos' consciousness. He saw flashes, 20 engineered suns, each infused with destiny, a galaxy drowning in endless war, humanity teetering at the brink of extinction, and now him brought into existence not by myth but by design. But design for what? The Emperor raised a hand, the machines hissed, the fluid drained. Kratos felt the weight of a new body pressing down upon him. It was larger than his old form, broader, more monstrous in its capability. His feet touched the cold metal of the chamber floor, and the ground trembled beneath him. The glass shattered outward. Kratos did not flinch. The Emperor observed him closely, as if studying a masterpiece forged in both brilliance and brutality. "You have endured much," the Emperor said, voice resonant, almost soothing, "more than most beings could fathom. Yet you stand still. That is why you were found, why you were chosen." Kratos said nothing. Words were useless things. Only truth mattered, and the truth was a weight pressing on his soul. He had been torn from one cycle of war, only to be cast into another. "What am I?" Kratos finally growled, his voice deeper, heavier, shaped by this new body. The Emperor's eyes glowed like distant suns. "You are my son." The words struck like a hammer. Kratos felt fury rise, rage, confusion. The memory of Zeus, of betrayal, of manipulation, of a destiny forced upon him by the whims of another father. His fists clenched, and the metal beneath him groaned under the pressure. But the Emperor did not step back. "I do not command your worship," he said, "only your purpose." The warp around them trembled, as if listening. "For you were reforged not to be a pawn," the Emperor continued, "but to be the blade that carves a future for all mankind." Kratos' breathing slowed. The rage simmered, not quenched but focused, like a blade heated white-hot. This father did not lie. This father did not beg. This father did not hide behind thunder and prophecy. This father expected. And for the first time since the ashes of Olympus clung to his skin, Kratos felt something unfamiliar. A pull not of vengeance, but of destiny. He lifted his gaze to the towering figure. "Then show me," Kratos said quietly, "the war you would have me fight." The Emperor nodded, once slow, deliberate, like a general acknowledging a weapon worthy of its forge. "Rise, Kratos," he commanded, voice echoing like a decree across the stars. "For you are no longer a God-Slayer of distant myths." The chamber lights flared. "You are a Primarch of the Imperium." And in the darkness of the warp, something vast and hateful stirred, aware that a new titan had entered the galaxy. A titan forged not by chaos, nor by fate, but by sheer defiance of both. Kratos breathed out, the sound like a storm rolling across a battlefield. His new life had begun. Kratos learned the weight of his new form long before he understood its purpose. In the first hours of his rebirth, every motion felt like a test of sinew, of bone, of will. The chamber where he stood was vast, built of steel the color of dead stars, its walls carved with machinery that hummed with ancient intelligence. Sparks crackled like lightning across conduits, suspended high above, illuminating the space in cold flashes. This place was not crafted by hands seeking beauty. Its architects valued only function, precision, and inevitable war. He felt the ground beneath him tremble with each step he took, not from instability, but from the sheer mass of the body the Emperor had forged for him. Each movement held a raw potential for destruction. Power radiated from him like heat from a forge. He raised one hand, flexing it, watching the tendons coil like braided adamantium cables. The strength he sensed there was more than mortal, more than divine. It was something else altogether. A voice echoed from a balcony above, cutting through the metallic silence. Subject: Theta 1 has stabilized. Neural resonance at 136% of theoretical maximum. Physical capacity: unmeasurable. A figure clad in crimson robes stepped into view. His metal mask was adorned with data scrolls and mechadendrites that writhed behind him like serpents seeking prey. a tech priest of the Mechanicum, servant of machines, keeper of knowledge forbidden to lesser minds. He bowed his head to the Emperor, then turned his mechanical gaze toward Kratos, as one might regard a mythical beast caged for study. "You are remarkable," the tech priest murmured through Vox-enhanced static, a design beyond even the Emperor's standard Primarch template. "Your cellular lattice is lined with materials our sensors cannot identify, resonant particles that react violently with the warp, yet stabilize under directed psychic pressure." Kratos understood none of it, but he felt the truth. He was not merely reborn. He was rebuilt, reforged, a weapon shaped from the remnants of a God-Slayer. The Emperor descended the steps toward him. He moved with an authority that made even the machines in the room dim their lights, as though bowing in silent reverence. He stopped before Kratos, his presence immense, yet controlled. "You feel it, do you not?" the Emperor said quietly. "The strength in your body, the storm within your blood." Kratos did feel it, the crackle of power that surged beneath his skin, the heat of a forge burning deep within his ribs. But he felt something else, too. A conflict, a fracture. Memories of Olympus still lingered like specters. The smell of ash, the weight of chains, the cries of gods torn apart by his fury, the pain of a father's lies. The Emperor's voice echoed through the chamber once more, pulling him back from that abyss. "This power is not a curse," the Emperor continued. "It is not the will of capricious gods. It is a purpose, a design meant not to shackle you, but to unleash what you were always capable of becoming." Kratos' jaw clenched. A purpose. He had heard such promises before. From Ares, from Zeus, from the pantheon of deceit and betrayal. But the Emperor did not speak like the gods of Olympus. There was no arrogance, no threat, only an absolute certainty he did not need to shout to make known. "You were chosen," the Emperor said, "because you have endured, because you have overcome what would have broken any other being. You are strength born of suffering. Will forge through trials no mortal or immortal should have survived. I did not create that within you." He stepped closer, and the warp itself seemed to recoil. "I merely gave it form." Kratos looked away, unable or unwilling to meet that gaze. The truth in the Emperor's words pressed against him like a weight. He was powerful, yes, perhaps the strongest of the Emperor's creations, but power alone did not define him. His past did, his scars, his failures, his grief. And the Emperor knew it. "You question your nature," the Emperor said, "as every Primarch does. Some believe themselves gods, others believe themselves monsters. Both are wrong." He lifted a hand and rested it briefly on Kratos' shoulder. The touch was firm, grounding. "You are neither, you are choice." For the first time since awakening in this new world, Kratos felt something shift within his chest. A small, dangerous hope. "Come," the Emperor said. "There is more you must see." He turned and walked toward the hall beyond the chamber. Kratos followed, each step echoing down the corridor like the stride of a titan. The walls were lined with metal statues, massive figures encased in armor that radiated menace, glory, and tragedy all at once. "Who are they?" Kratos asked. "Prototypes," the Emperor replied. "Attempts at creating what you now are. Some succeeded, most did not. They passed a statue clad in armor wreathed with chains. Others," the Emperor continued, "proved too unstable, too driven by primal impulses or unrestrained fury." Kratos felt those words like a blade. He knew what unrestrained fury could become. He had drowned entire pantheons in his rage. "Your strength is not your greatest asset," the Emperor said without stopping. "Your greatest asset is that you have faced what you truly are and survived." They entered a vast chamber that stretched farther than Kratos could see. Hundreds of training platforms, mechanized testing arenas, and weapons racks filled the space like a cathedral built for war. "This is where your path begins," the Emperor said, not with the blade, but with understanding. Kratos stepped forward, his gaze drawn to a wall of weapons, massive chainswords, thunder hammers, glaives, halberds, relics that dwarfed even the greatest weapons of Olympus. Yet his eyes settled on something else, two long chains, ending in weighted blades. They vibrated with an eerie, familiar pull. The blades of chaos. Or something like them, new, reforged in alien steel, their edges humming with lethal promise. "You recognize them," the Emperor observed. Kratos approached slowly, reaching out. The chains rattled, whispering memories of fire, blood, betrayal. He hesitated. His past, his curse, his torment, these blades had carved his fate. They were the instruments of his suffering. But the Emperor spoke once more, his voice steady. "These are not your past," he said. "They are your choice. Take them or reject them, what matters is that the choice is yours." Kratos closed his hand around the hilt. A shock of power surged through him, but it was not the agonizing fire of Ares. It was clean, pure, untainted by divine cruelty. The blades responded to his will, not the will of any god. He turned to face the Emperor, chains hanging at his sides like silent serpents. "I am no god," Kratos said. "No," the Emperor replied. "You are more." Their eyes locked once again, two beings bound by purpose yet shaped by wildly different worlds. "And now," the Emperor said, "you must learn what it means to be a Primarch." Kratos straightened, the weight of his new destiny settling upon him. He did not know this Imperium. He did not know its wars, its enemies, or its endless suffering. But he understood struggle. He understood loss. He understood the burden of power. And he understood that this galaxy, like every world he had ever known, was drowning in conflict. He drew in a long, steady breath. "Then show me," Kratos said, "how to begin." The Emperor nodded, and the great chamber roared to life, machinery awakening like sleeping giants. The path ahead demanded blood, discipline, and iron will. It demanded a warrior who could carry the weight of a galaxy. It demanded a Primarch. The moment was sudden, violent, inevitable. Kratos did not know what tore him from the Emperor's side, whether it was sorcery, sabotage, or the cruel will of the warp itself, but he remembered the sensation, the floor shattering beneath his feet, reality splitting apart like a wound ripped open by unseen claws. One moment he stood in the training chamber, the Emperor speaking of purpose and destiny. The next, the universe fractured. A gale of psychic force screamed through the hall. Lights burst like dying stars. Sirens groaned in metallic agony. The tech priests scrambled, their vox systems spitting panicked binary prayers, but nothing could hold back the storm. The warp had come to claim its prize. Kratos felt it before the others did, felt the rippling currents of malice stirring like predators waking to the scent of fresh prey. The air thickened, shadows lengthened. The walls bled colors not meant for mortal eyes. And then, with a sound like the dying breath of a titan, the world exploded outward. A clawed rift swallowed him whole. There was no footing, no up or down, no air to breathe. Just the warp, an ocean of impossible hues, spiraling currents of soulfire, the distant echoes of 1,000 damned voices dragging their nails along the inside of his mind. The chains wrapped around his arms rattled, reacting to forces older than any pantheon he had known. He roared, swinging blindly at the shapeless currents. But one cannot strike the sea. His blows met nothingness, and the nothingness swallowed them. The warp howled back at him. Images flickered around him, visions of futures that had not happened, memories that were not his, terrors given form by psychic malevolence. He saw the Emperor, distant, distorted, reaching out through blinding light. He saw figures, brothers he had not yet met, each flung through the warp to their own fates, scattered like broken stars. But the warp had a special interest in him. A god-killer, a soul forged in rebellion, a being who had once slain the divine. The entities that prowled the hellish currents loomed closer, their laughter rolling through the storm. Khorne, scenting the rage burning inside him, whispered in roars of blood and carnage. Slaanesh, tasting his grief, sang lullabies carved from torment. Tzench, studying the scars across his soul, murmured promises of freedom from destiny itself. Even Nurgle crooned with sickly affection, drawn to the rot of regret that clung to his heart. The warp wanted him, and it would tear him apart to have him. But Kratos was no stranger to being devoured. He fought the storm not with weapons, but with will. His roar shook the currents, sending ripples through the spectral tides. He clawed toward the faintest glimmer of stability, a shard of reality drifting like wreckage on a cosmic sea. For a moment, he almost reached it, and then the warp, in its cruel amusement, hurled him downward. He crashed through the veil of reality like a comet hurled by an angry god. Pain followed. His body slammed into cold, jagged stone, shattering rock on impact. The sky above was a choking haze of smoke and ash. The ground trembled beneath constant bombardment, distant thunder rolling endlessly across a battlefield that never rested. The air reeked of iron, rot, and old war. This world was not welcoming. It was not gentle. It was not kind. It was perfect. Kratos lay in the crater for a long moment, his new form heaving with each breath. The warp's residue still clung to him like ghostly fire, but the solid ground steadied him. The world vibrated beneath him with a savage rhythm, a heartbeat of violence. He stood slowly. Mountains of black stone tattered by artillery fire surrounded him. Rivers of molten slag cut across the landscape. The horizon burned with the fury of constant warfare. This was not a world where civilizations thrived. This was a world where they struggled to survive. A death world. He breathed in deeply, tasting dust and blood in the wind. A voice harsh, mortal shouted in a language he did not know. Figures emerged through the smoke. Warriors clad in scavenged armor, their faces painted with ash, wielding crude axes, blades, and rusted firearms. They surrounded him cautiously, like hunters circling a beast they feared more than they understood. One stepped forward, a chieftain, perhaps. His voice boomed across the crater, his words sharp and commanding. Kratos did not understand the language, but he understood tone, challenge, authority, threat. He met the man's gaze without fear. The chieftain raised his weapon, an iron cleaver forged in desperation, and pointed it at Kratos. The others shouted, some roared, some hesitated, all feared him. Kratos' jaw tightened. He knew this dance. Mortals, seeing a titan in their midst, would either worship or attempt to kill him. He cared for neither. The chieftain swung. Kratos caught the blade mid-strike. The weapon cracked. The man stared, trembling with disbelief. Kratos did not strike him, not yet. Instead, he pushed him back with a single motion, gentle by his standards, but powerful enough to send the man flying across the scorched ground. Silence fell over the warriors like a veil. Fear. Recognition. Oh. They dropped to their knees. They bowed their heads. Kratos frowned. Worship was a path he would never walk again, but respect earned through strength rather than divine command was a language he understood. He gestured for them to rise. Slowly, cautiously, they obeyed. The tribe took him in. They taught him their tongue, their customs, their wars. He learned the name of the planet Tartarus 9, a world locked in perpetual conflict, where life survived only through strength and unwavering resolve. The people revered power, not prophecy. They valued endurance, not glory. They followed those who could protect them. Kratos rose through their ranks with ease. He fought against monstrous creatures bred in the planet's toxic wastelands. He led raids against rival tribes that survived by plunder. He tore apart armored war beasts with his bare hands, earning names spoken with reverence and dread. The Red Wraith, the chain-born Titan, the godless Reaver. But he did not seek dominion. He sought discipline. He carved the lesson of control into every warrior under him. Rage without restraint meant death. Fury unchained meant ruin. These were truths he had carved into his own flesh long ago. The tribe changed under his guidance. They became something more. United, disciplined, relentless. And in the quiet moments rare, precious Kratos would look to the stars, wondering if the Emperor still searched for him, if the promise of purpose still awaited him, if brothers he had never met still lived. He did not know that the galaxy shook with the Emperor's rage at losing his son. He did not know the warp whispered his name with growing hunger. He did not know chaos marked him as a prize beyond measure. He only knew that this world called to him, not as a prison, but as a forge. He had been shattered and scattered. Now he was becoming whole again, and somewhere beyond the toxic skies of Tartarus 9, destiny stirred, awaiting the moment the Emperor would finally find the sun stolen by the warp. Kratos lifted his gaze to the burning horizon. He was ready. For years, Tartarus 9 burned. The sky was a wound of red smoke and drifting ash. The air tasted of iron. War was not an event, but a climate endless, crushing, inevitable. Tribes rose and fell like sparks in a furnace, consumed by the brutality of the world they fought to inhabit. Yet, through it all, one tribe endured, one tribe grew. The tribe of the chain-born Titan. Kratos stood at the edge of a jagged escarpment, jagged stones beneath his feet, the winds whipping dust around him in great spirals. Below stretched a battlefield of smoldering ruins and fallen warriors, the aftermath of another victorious campaign. Behind him came the rumble of his people, hardened survivors who had carved a path through Tartarus 9 under his guidance. Their armor was rough, their weapons scavenged, but their discipline was iron. He had resisted becoming their ruler, but he could not resist becoming their protector. And today, something in the air changed. The wind grew still. The ever-present thunder quieted. Even the tremors in the ground, the heartbeat of Tartarus, slowed to a halt. A silence fell across the world so complete, it seemed to smother the planet itself. The warriors around Kratos stiffened, sensing the shift. They exchanged anxious glances, unsure whether this was omen or doom, but Kratos knew. Deep in the marrow of his reforged bones, he felt the pressure, subtle yet immense, of a presence descending from the heavens. He had felt this once before, in a vat of glowing fluid, in a chamber of steel and purpose. The Emperor was coming. The sky tore open, not with fire or warp sorcery, but with the raw brilliance of technology so ancient and advanced it might as well have been divine. A massive craft emerged through the shattered clouds, golden armor plates gleaming like a second sun, engines roaring with disciplined fury. Thunderhawks spiraled alongside it, their wings slicing through the ash storm in perfect formation. The people of Tartarus dropped to their knees. Kratos did not. He stood unmoving, a monolith carved from will and memory, as the Emperor's flagship descended toward the ravaged plain. Its landing sent shockwaves through the bedrock, splitting the earth and scattering debris into the air like shards of a broken world. A ramp extended. From the blinding interior stepped figures of impossible grandeur, custodians clad in auramite armor, their halberds glowing with lethal radiance. They marched in pairs, each step a declaration that death itself would kneel before them. But Kratos barely saw them, for behind them emerged the one he had been waiting for. The Emperor, not as a phantom in the warp, not as a voice in the dark, but in flesh immense, radiant, terrifying. His presence pressed against reality like a force that the universe tolerated only out of fear. His armor glowed with psychic energy, inscriptions burning like ancient runes of cosmic authority. His eyes, twin suns, studied Kratos across the battlefield with the calmness of one who sees everything and misses nothing. For a long moment, neither moved. A tribe of hardened warriors crouched low, trembling, unable to comprehend such immensity. Custodians stood ready to carve down anything that so much as twitched in the Emperor's direction. Kratos remained still, his chains hanging silent at his sides. When the Emperor finally spoke, the world seemed to hold its breath. "Kratos," he said, his voice resonating across the plains like a decree shaping the fate of stars. "My son." The words traveled into Kratos like a spear, not of pain, but of memory. The vat, the chamber, the promise, the storm that tore him away before he could understand fully why he had been made. "You found me," Kratos said quietly. "I never lost you," the Emperor replied. "The warp attempted to claim you, but it cannot hold that which refuses to kneel." Kratos stepped forward, slow, controlled. Warriors on both sides flinched. Custodians gripped their weapons tightly, but the Emperor lifted one hand, and all motion ceased. "You have shaped this world," the Emperor said, "bent its fury to discipline, molded savagery into strength. This is the mark of a Primarch." Kratos felt a rumble in his chest, something between a low growl and a reluctant acceptance. He had not sought dominion, he had sought survival for himself, for the tribe, for the broken world that had become his forge. "You say I am your son," Kratos said, "but I was torn from you before I could learn what that meant." The Emperor descended the final steps of the ramp, walking toward him. The custodians tensed, but obeyed the Emperor's silent command. "You were stolen," the Emperor said, "stolen by the warp, scattered like your brothers, each to a world shaped by cruelty or chaos. But the warp's cruelty is a forge. It reforges those who survive it. He stopped before Kratos, two titans, two storms, two forces that the galaxy would one day tremble beneath. "You endured," the Emperor said. "That is your nature. That is why you were made." A long silence stretched between them, and then Kratos spoke, finally, asking the question that had burned in him since awakening in the vat. "What do you want of me?" The Emperor did not smile. He did not boast. He did not manipulate. "I ask nothing you cannot choose to give," he said. "But humanity stands on the brink. It needs warriors who understand not only strength, but cost. It needs leaders forged not from arrogance, but from truth." He extended a hand, not as a god demanding worship, not as Zeus once had, cloaked in lies, but as a father seeking a son. "Come with me," the Emperor said. "Come, Primarch of the Legion of Fury. Your brothers await. Your destiny awaits." Kratos looked at the tribe behind him, men and women hardened by war, who had followed him not out of faith but out of respect. They were watching him with wide, fearful eyes. They knew something was being asked of him that was larger than their world, larger than any of them. He gave them a final nod. A promise, a farewell, a recognition. Then he placed his massive hand into the Emperor's outstretched one. In that instant, psychic energy surged around them, golden arcs ripping through the air. The ground trembled, the warp recoiled, the sky brightened. A bond reforged, a destiny illuminated. The Emperor whispered, barely audible over the storm of power, "Welcome home." And for the first time in a very long time, Kratos felt something he had forgotten existed. Not peace, but purpose. A purpose he would carve into the galaxy with the same certainty he had once carved destruction into the gods. The journey back to the Imperium was not made in silence. The Emperor's flagship soared through the void, a golden titan cleaving the darkness of space with engines that hummed like ancient hymns. Tartarus 9 dwindled behind them, a scarred world that had served its purpose, a forge, a crucible, a lesson. Kratos stood at the viewing deck, watching the planet shrink into a faint ember against the abyss. He felt neither sorrow nor nostalgia, only readiness. "Do you regret leaving them?" a voice asked. It was not the Emperor's. Kratos turned to find a custodian standing beside him, towering even over most Astartes, yet still dwarfed by Kratos's Primarch stature. His armor shimmered with gold, each plate etched with symbols of loyalty, vigilance, and silent judgment. "I do not regret what must be done," Kratos replied. "But they fought beside me. They bled beside me. That truth does not fade." The custodian inclined his head slightly, a gesture of respect few beings had ever earned. "Then they will be remembered. Such is the will of our master." Kratos returned his gaze to the stars. "Memory is not enough. Strength must be forged from it." The custodian offered no response. In the Imperium, strength was the only currency that mattered. The ship entered the Sol system with a psychic ripple that swept across Terra like a quiet storm. As they approached the cradle of humanity, Kratos felt its weight, millions of lives stacked upon millions, a world suffocating under the burden of survival. When the flagship descended toward the Himalayan mountains, the custodians formed a golden phalanx around Kratos, escorting him through colossal gates carved with images of battles both ancient and eternal. Inside, halls of cold marble stretched endlessly, lit by mechanisms older than many stars. And waiting at the end of those halls was something new, something made for him, a legion. They stood in disciplined ranks that extended beyond sight, tens of thousands of giants in dark crimson armor, their pauldrons inscribed with sigils of fury, discipline, and sacrifice. Their helmets were angular and severe, reminiscent of ancient Spartan visors, but with a brutal, industrial grimness native to the Imperium. These were not mortals, not tribesmen, not broken survivors. They were Astartes, his Astartes. As Kratos entered the chamber, a thunderous impact shook the ground. Every warrior dropped to one knee. A single voice, amplified by 1,000 armored gorgets, thundered through the cathedral-like hall. "We await your command, Lord Primarch." Kratos did not speak at first. He walked between the kneeling warriors, observing their armor, their weapons, the fire in their eyes. They were engineered for war, raised through indoctrination and augmentation to be the pinnacle of human combat. Yet Kratos sensed something hollow in some of them, a flaw he knew well, a flaw that had once defined him. Unrestrained rage. It could strengthen, and it could destroy. He stopped before them, silent. A Primarch did not need to shout. Words carried weight only when earned. Finally, his voice echoed through the hall. "You are strength," he said, "but strength without discipline is weakness wearing armor." The Astartes stiffened. "You are fury," Kratos continued, "but fury without purpose is a fire that devours its own." He paced slowly, chains rattling faintly at his sides. "I have lived through worlds consumed by rage. I have seen armies undone by their own bloodlust. You will not be such a legion." The Emperor watched from the balcony above, his radiant presence unseen by most yet felt by all. He said nothing. Kratos would shape his legion as he saw fit. Kratos raised one hand. "Stand." The legion rose as one. "You are not beasts," he said. "You are not slaves to anger. Fury is not freedom. Fury is responsibility, and you will wield it with mastery, not abandon." His words reverberated through the chamber like the first strokes of a hammer forging a blade. "From this day forward," he declared, "you are the Legion of Fury. Yours is the wrath that protects mankind, not destroys it. Yours is the fire that burns only when commanded. You are storm and shield. And you will not break." A roar erupted from the Legion, not chaotic, not frenzied, but unified. A disciplined thunder, a controlled inferno. The Emperor turned to his custodians. "He has already surpassed expectations," he murmured. Training began. The Legion of Fury was forged in pain and perfected through restraint. Kratos moved among them, correcting stances, breaking formations, forcing them to rebuild stronger. His teachings were brutal. Fight until your muscles tear, then fight with bone. Strike only when the blow matters. Let fury rise, but never let it command you. Kill not for glory, but for necessity. Protect humanity, even if humanity curses you for it. Some Astartes struggled against their own impulses. Kratos singled them out, not for punishment, but for guidance. He understood them too well. He had once been a slave to rage, a puppet of gods who fed on his fury. He would not let his sons become the same. He devised a ritual, a test performed in complete silence. Each Astartes would stand before him, unarmed. Kratos would provoke them, pushing their instincts to the breaking point, until the warrior either succumbed to uncontrolled rage or mastered it. Those who broke were not executed. They were brought back, retaught, reforged. The Legion began to change. Their movements became sharper, their focus clearer, their fury colder. Not a wildfire, a directed bolt of lightning. They became a legion whose silence on the battlefield was more terrifying than the chaos hordes that howled at their gates. In time, the Emperor returned to oversee their progress. He watched with unreadable pride as Kratos fought 10 Astartes at once, disarming them with precision and controlled ferocity. There was no wasted motion, no wild fury, only purpose. The Emperor stepped forward. "You lead them well." "I lead them as I lead myself," Kratos replied, "to master the storm." "And would you say you have mastered yours?" the Emperor asked. Kratos' jaw tightened. "I have learned to endure it." "That is enough," the Emperor said. A pause, a wait. "There is a war brewing, my son, and soon the galaxy will call for the Legion of Fury." Kratos nodded. "Then we will answer." The Emperor's voice softened, rare, almost paternal. "You have given them what I could not." "And what is that?" Kratos asked. "Freedom from their own destruction." Kratos looked at the Legion, standing in silent formation. "They freed themselves," he said. A faint smile passed the Emperor's lips, gone in an instant. That night, alone in his chambers, Kratos stared at the blades of fury, his reforged chains resting against the wall. They glowed faintly, whispering of violence, memory, and purpose. He touched them with a quiet reverence. A new war awaited, a new purpose, a new legacy. But as he closed his eyes, he felt something else stir. A ripple in the warp. a whisper of laughter, a familiar hunger. Chaos had noticed him, and it would not stay silent for long. Sleep did not come easily to a Primarch. Kratos lay motionless in the darkened chamber, the only place in the Imperial palace where silence was permitted to exist without being crushed beneath the weight of marching soldiers and roaring machinery. Even here, silence was a fragile thing, threatened at any moment by the hum of distant reactors or the pulse of psychic wards buried deep within Terra's foundations. But tonight, it wasn't the machinery of mankind that disturbed the stillness. It was the warp. A ripple shuddered through the chamber like the breath of some unseen beast. Kratos' eyes snapped open. The shadows in the corners shifted, not away from the light, but toward him. The air thickened, vibrating with whispers. Only he could hear whispers that carried the bitter scent of blood, sorrow, and forbidden prophecy. He rose to his feet, the floor creaking beneath the gravity of his build. The air grew colder. The chamber's lights flickered. And then, behind him, a faint red glow bloomed. Khorne spoke first. Not with words, but with emotion, a roar of warfare, the metallic taste of blood, the intoxicating ecstasy of combat. His presence crashed into Kratos like a hammer. His fury tugged at Kratos' heart, awakening instincts buried deep within the God-Slayer's soul. Slaughter, rage, triumph through violence. Kratos clenched his fists. His breath became a storm. The old rage simmered, rising to the surface like molten metal. But he did not give in. He whispered not a prayer, not a plea, but a warning. Leave. The shadows rippled in defiance. Then Slaanesh approached, her presence slithering through the chamber like silk soaked in venom. A whisper caressed his ear, a voice dripping with temptation. You hide your pain well, God-Killer. Let me free you from it. Let me take the grief from your bones. Let me soothe the scars on your soul. His jaw tightened. For a moment, he felt the phantom touch of Calliope's small hand, felt the last breath of his wife as the chains of Ares pulled him into madness. Slaanesh pressed harder, offering to fill the void with illusions of comfort, of pleasure, of the life he lost. Kratos growled, teeth grinding. I know your lies. The chamber darkened. A cold wind rose. Defiance appeared next, not through shape nor sound, but through shifting thoughts, ideas, possibilities, futures that spiraled around Kratos like cosmic serpents. You are not meant for chains, Defiance whispered through the folds of reality. Not the chains of Ares, nor the chains of the Emperor. Break them. Rewrite your destiny. Become the god you once were, become more. Visions flooded Kratos' mind. Him standing alone on the golden throne, the Imperium kneeling before him. A galaxy purged of weakness. His legion of fury ruling as the perfect instrument of destruction. The temptation was sharp, intoxicating. He closed his eyes. And in that darkness, he felt something else. A sickly warmth bloomed behind him. Nurgle approached last, waddling through the warp like a grotesque grandfather made of rot and despair. Oh, poor child, Nurgle croaked warmly. So much pain, so much sorrow clinging to your soul. Come, let grandfather ease your suffering. Let decay consume your grief. Let rot make you whole. Kratos inhaled sharply, the smell of rot and moss filling his lungs. Then he roared, not in rage, but in defiance. The roar shook the chamber, rattling the stonework, splintering the psychic illusions. The air cracked with golden sparks as the Emperor's wards flared to life, severing the connection. The whispers vanished. The shadows retreated. The warp recoiled. When all fell quiet, Kratos was alone again. But he knew better. He had not simply been visited. He had been marked. The next morning, Kratos entered the Strategium to find the Emperor waiting for him. The room was a cathedral of battle, a dome filled with flickering star maps, tactical hololiths, and the faint hum of psychic presence. Immortal generals and robed savants bowed as Kratos approached, but the Emperor did not bow. He studied Kratos with eyes that pierced through armor, flesh, and thought. You felt them, the Emperor said. It was not a question. Kratos nodded once. They spoke to you? Another nod. And you resisted. This time, Kratos met his father's gaze. I will not be a slave again." For a brief moment, a flicker of something rare, the Emperor's expression softened. "You have done well," the Emperor said quietly. "Even the greatest of your brothers struggled against such temptations." Kratos' brow furrowed. "You knew they would come." "I did," the Emperor admitted. "You were always unique. The warp fears you, desires you. You are a soul unlike any other, a soul forged in defiance of gods. Chaos does not see you as prey." He paused. "It sees you as a weapon." Kratos' fists tightened. "I am no weapon," he said. "You are whatever you choose to be." The Emperor stepped closer, lowering his voice. "But make no mistake, my son. Chaos has cast its gaze upon you. It will not relent. It will not stop. As you rise, so too will its hunger." Kratos felt the truth of it, felt the lingering echo of the warp gnawing at his soul's edges. The Emperor turned to a star map, focusing on a region pulsing faintly with psychic corruption. "Your first campaign awaits," he said. "There is a world infected by the warp, a world where chaos cults gather strength. You will go there, you and your legion." Kratos stepped forward. "To kill them?" "To teach them fear," the Emperor corrected. "Chaos must learn that even its whispers cannot bend you." Kratos bowed his head in grim acknowledgement. He would show Chaos what defiance truly meant. Later that night, in the training fields, Kratos watched his Astartes spar. Their movements were sharper now, precise, controlled. Rage simmered within each of them but never spilled over. They wore their anger like armor, not chains. A warrior approached him, removing his helmet. "Lord Primarch," he said, "we sensed something, a disturbance, darkness creeping at the edge of our dreams." Kratos looked at his sons, hundreds of them, their armor gleaming under the cold lights. "You feel what follows me," Kratos said. "Chaos believes I can be turned." The Astartes stiffened. "But hear me," Kratos continued, voice deep and unshakable. "I once drowned entire worlds in rage. I once let fury rule my every breath. Never again." His eyes flared with a cold, disciplined fire. "If chaos seeks me, let it come. It will not find a slave." The Astartes slammed their fists against their chests in thunderous unison. "For the Primarch," they roared. Kratos nodded. "For humanity," he said. "For the Emperor." And in the distance, beyond Terra's protective wards, something vast stirred. A shadow, a prophecy, a hunger. Chaos had seen him, and it would test him. The galaxy trembled in anticipation, for a storm was coming, not born of rage, not born of divine cruelty, but born of a Primarch who had mastered both. War had a way of revealing truth. Not the truth men believed, nor the truths they hoped for, but the cruel, unyielding truths that the galaxy carved into flesh and bone. Kratos learned this the moment his legion arrived on the corrupted world of Halcyon Theta, a once thriving forge colony now drowned in heresy. What greeted them was not an army but a nightmare. Cities twisted like metal, screaming in agony. Seas boiled into tar under storms of warp energy. The sky writhed with veins of crimson light, pulsing as if the planet itself had been grafted to a living heart. Chaos cultists marched across ruined highways, chanting in tongues that bled into the mind like thorns. And above them, towering like a titan sculpted from shadow and madness, stood a daemon prince. Kratos had seen gods. He had killed gods. But this was something different. The warp had shaped the creature from human sin and cosmic spite, forging a new divinity in mockery of everything the Imperium stood for. When it turned its burning eyes toward Kratos, the air crackled with recognition. "You," the creature hissed, its voice a chorus of hatred. "God-Slayer." Kratos stepped forward, chains rattling at his sides. "Come," he growled. The daemon surged forward with enough force to shatter mountains. The Legion of Fury charged behind their Primarch, their disciplined roars rising like a thunderstorm of iron will. They carved through hordes of corrupted warriors, their crimson armor becoming streaked with black ichor and warp bile. But Kratos barely noticed them. His focus was the beast before him. The daemon's fist descended like a warhead. Kratos raised his arms, meeting the blow with a thunderous impact that sent shockwaves across the battlefield. Stone fractured. Buildings collapsed. The air itself detonated. Kratos pushed back. With a roar that shook the heavens, he drove the creature into the ground. His chains ignited with psychic resonance, glowing like molten stars. He swung them in brutal arcs, carving deep wounds that oozed liquid corruption. But the daemon only laughed. "You are destined to join us," it whispered through broken fangs. "The warp has chosen you, as its champion, as its executioner, as its god." Kratos grit his teeth. "I serve no god." The daemon's laughter grew louder, folding into the sound of 1,000 screaming souls. "You already have," it said. "In every life you took, in every world you drowned in blood. Rage is our scripture, you are its prophet." Kratos' heart lurched not in fear, but in recognition. Was that not what he had once been? Had Olympus not crumbled beneath his fury? Had he not carved his vengeance across the realms like a living plague? The daemon's claws pierced his chest. Pain erupted, a familiar, ancient pain. "Embrace what you are," the creature hissed, twisting the talons deeper. A weapon of wrath, a destroyer, a beast crafted not by love, but by violence. The world blurred, the battlefield dissolved, and the warp poured into him. In the madness of the rift, he saw everything. Himself on the golden throne, drowning the Imperium in rivers of blood. His legion marching across stars, not as protectors, but as executioners. The Emperor lying broken at his feet, the galaxy burning behind him. A pantheon of chaos gods crowning him with chains made of screaming souls. Then the vision twisted. He saw Terra safe, guarded by his legion. He saw chaos beaten back, howling in rage at its failure. He saw humanity rising, united under an Imperium reforged in discipline rather than tyranny. He saw the Emperor smiling gently, briefly, the way a father should. Two futures, two worlds, two Kratos, one a god of destruction, one a guardian of mankind. At the center of it all, a voice whispered, not from the warp, not from chaos, not from fate, his own. "You choose." The battlefield surged back into focus. The daemon prince pushed harder, warp flames erupting across its body. Golden light cracked from Kratos' chest wound, but his feet remained planted. He placed a hand against the daemon's jaw, gripping it not like a warrior, but like a judge. "I am not your god," Kratos growled. Chains blazed as if ignited by the Emperor's own psychic fire. "And I am not your monster." With one motion, he tore the daemon's head off. Warp energy detonated outward in a violent, howling scream. The sky split, the ground shook, chaos recoiled, pulling its tendrils from the planet like a wounded animal. Halcyon Theta gasped as its nightmare was severed. Kratos stood alone among the ashes as the daemon's corpse dissolved into dust. Behind him, the Legion of Fury knelt. "Lord Primarch," their captain said, bloodied and breathing hard. "What now?" Kratos looked up at the sky, not with rage, not with sorrow, but with resolve. "We rebuild," he said. "We protect, we endure." The Astartes bowed their heads. "And if chaos comes again?" the captain asked. Kratos tightened his chains, feeling their weight, their history, their promise. "Then we remind them," he said, "why gods fear mortals." Yet even victory had a cost. When Kratos returned to Terra, the Emperor awaited him in the Hall of Victories. Golden banners flickered in the psychic breeze as thunder rumbled against the palace's distant walls. "You faced chaos directly," the Emperor said, "and you saw what they offer." "I did," Kratos replied. "And what did you decide?" Kratos looked into the eyes of the man who had created him not as a weapon, but as a son. "I will not be their slave," he said, "nor yours." A hush fell over the hall. A custodian shifted in alarm. But the Emperor smiled. Not warmly, not softly, but with something rare approval. "Good," the Emperor said, "for only a free soul can save mankind." Kratos stepped closer, towering like a storm forged in flesh. "What if I fail?" he asked. The Emperor placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then the galaxy will suffer," he said simply. "But if you succeed, the galaxy will survive." Silence stretched between them. Finally, Kratos spoke. "I choose humanity." The Emperor nodded. "Then humanity chooses you." But far beyond Terra, in the swirling madness of the Imperium, chaos stirred. The death of their daemon prince echoed like a wound. The defiance of the God-Slayer burned like an insult. The gods whispered among themselves, "He will be ours. He will fall. He will rise. He will betray. He will redeem." For no matter what Kratos chose today, fate was never simple in the galaxy of the 41st Millennium. The Primarch of Fury had made his stand, but destiny, like the warp, always whispered, "We will see."